So just the other day, I was having a one-on-one coaching call with another real estate investor. Now, this person was not a brand new investor. They'd already been in the business for several years. They had 4 rental properties. They'd done a good job of getting long-term financing, 4 and 5% interest rates. Their properties were in good locations. So they've had some success. And their ultimate goal is to own a portfolio of properties. I call that a small and mighty real estate investing portfolio. But eventually, they wanted to get to the point where they can live off their rental income. They work a full-time job. They want to be able to have this as a part-time job, maybe working a couple hours a week like I do, and then living off the rental income. But here's the reality of where this person is and why they were talking to me. The portfolio they have, those 4 properties, is not producing enough cash flow to get anywhere close to their goals. And on top of that, their acquisitions goals to try to grow and buy more properties has sort of been turned upside down. The financing they got at 4 and 5%, where they could actually make it cash flow, is now 7 or 8%. They're having a hard time even making deals make sense when they run the numbers. And they're also finding that they thought with interest rates going up, it would be much easier to find properties, which is a little bit easier, but they're finding that it's still, the prices are high, there's low supply, so it's not that easy to find good deals either. So in other words, this person feels very stuck, kind of frozen, even to the point where they mentioned to me, I think I'm just going to sit on the sidelines, kind of wait it out, see what happens. Maybe prices will come down, maybe interest rates will come down. But in other words, they're trying to get out of the game for a while. Because I've had a lot of conversations just like that recently, I'm willing to bet that many of you also share that frustration. So I want to tell you what my response was to that person. My response was really in 2 parts. The first part is addressing what they've already done. They have these properties that aren't producing as much cash flow, and they kind of feel like, am I doing the right thing? Am I actually on the way to my ultimate destination? And I want to point out and just remind you, this is something I talked a lot about in my book, The Small and Mighty Real Estate Investor, is that we go on this journey as a rental investor. We begin as a starter where you're just trying to get momentum, buy those first 1, 2, 3, 4 properties, and then you get into the wealth building phase, and eventually you get to the harvesting or the ender phase. Well, this person and these people who I've been talking to are squarely in the wealth building phase. And it's natural to look at your portfolio and say, you know what, I just bought these properties. I'm using a lot of leverage. They don't produce enough cash flow yet. But what they have done is they've bought these assets. They've secured debt over the long run. It is going to get better and better over time. So my first feedback was just be patient. These properties are like fruit trees. You plant the seed, you water them. It takes some time to grow. You can't force the growth process. And being a wealth builder is all about growth. So part 1, just be patient. But part 2 is they're not done yet. They want to grow some more and they're frustrated by this current environment. And my feedback there is not to sugarcoat the truth. You know, I could put rose-colored glasses on and say, oh, things will get better. Interest rates are going to come back down. And I'm not a crystal ball person. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I do know, and I believe to my bones, that you can't sit on the sidelines in real estate investing if you want to have success long run. The idea, the cliche is you want to have time in the market, not trying to time the market. So what do you do then? You have to figure out a way to solve the problems today because it really has changed. Financing is such a big piece of the puzzle. You know, the other fundamentals are the same. Rental properties haven't changed. People still move to locations. You still got to find tenants. You still got to buy good properties. All those fundamentals are the same. But the techniques of applying those fundamentals, particularly with financing, particularly with finding good deals, those have changed. And so you've got to change with it. And the way I'm thinking about this is kind of like going from being an amateur to being a pro if you were playing sports. You know, the last 4 or 5 years in the market we were in, it was kind of an unusual time where as an amateur, as a real estate investor amateur, you could still make things work. The interest rates were so low that you could still make cash flow happen. The difference now, and this is good for some people, this is not good for other people, is that you have to commit more to improving your skills. I think about this like mastery. If I were coaching you in basketball, we've got to go back to the fundamentals. We've got to practice dribbling, passing, shooting, conditioning. In real estate investing, you got to go back to the fundamentals of finding good deals. You got to build a system to generate leads, both with listed properties, MLS properties, so you can filter out and get only the best properties that are listed on the market and go after those and try to make those happen really quickly, but also off-market lead generation. You need to have a system, a process, a business plan to actually generate leads to actually buy properties off the market that nobody else knows about. That's one piece of the techniques that you have to really change and go pro on. Another is the financing, of course. And I think about financing a lot like having a toolbox. And most of us have just been using a hammer for the last 4 or 5 years. We've been getting a conventional loan, 30-year fixed financing at low interest rates. And that's still a great tool, right? But when things change like this, when it doesn't make sense with that tool, you got to put the tool back in the toolbox. You got to learn how to use some other tools. So in our world of real estate investing, that means, how do I use seller financing? How do I use private money? How do I maybe partner with people who have the cash? Because right now is actually a really good time to pay cash for properties. Think about it. If you're going to buy a property that had an 8% mortgage, but you had a bunch of cash that you could just go pay cash for the property, you're essentially taking the place at the bank and making 8% off the top, plus anything else that you would make with that rental property. It's an unusual time where actually paying cash is a good thing. But what if you don't have the cash? You're new, you're growing, you've run out of your own cash. Well, you got to figure out how to work with other people who do have the cash. There's tons and tons and tons of money out there. That's not the problem. The problem is finding good deals, understanding how to structure it in a way that this lender and you as the borrower, or this partner, this other person can benefit with you. So there are techniques to do that. And one of the things I'm optimistic about is that these challenges of finding good deals, putting financing together, also just the operations of managing your rental properties and the systems, the maintenance, those are things that I've been working on for years. And as a coach who loves helping people get from where they are right now to where they could be, where their potential is, this time is really exciting for me. It's something that I am wanting to get back in the game. That's why I'm talking to people and I'm coaching people and I'm trying to help them, because I'm seeing success from people who sort of shift their strategy, go pro, and focus on mastering some of those fundamental skills. And that leads me to an announcement, something brand new that I've never done before that I think is going to be a game changer for a lot of people. And it's a program called Rental Property Mastery. So when I think about that one-on-one call I had with that real estate investor, those problems are solvable. They seem overwhelming. They seem to be frozen. They seem to have frustration. Like, am I ever going to get through this? But I've had a lot of experience. I've been through some of those challenges myself. I've coached a lot of people over the last 21 years as a real estate investor. And so RPM is a way for me to give you a lot of my knowledge, a lot of my experience, a lot of my feedback. And this is the place where I'm going to be hanging out. It's a community of people. So it's going to be one part coaching, one part a community, and it's going to be a limited community of up to 300 people. And then there's going to be a lot of action, of doing, of people making progress on a day-to-day, on a week-to-week basis. Now, there's going to be a link below in the podcast and the video description if you want to join RPM and you want to get more details. But I thought I would unpack here a little bit of what's going to happen inside of RPM, what the experience is like. And first and foremost, let's take that idea that you're a little bit overwhelmed. You're trying to figure out a focus. Remember that journey of the real estate investor from starter to wealth builder to ender? Well, I've put together a blueprint. This is something that I've used myself. I've coached a lot of people and helped them with, where I basically do an assessment for you, where you have these different skills. Like if I were a basketball coach, I'm assessing how good you are at shooting or passing or conditioning, those kind of things. We look at that as a real estate investor and find out, where are you weak? Where are you strong? Where do you really need to focus and learn and take some action on in order to make progress? So first and foremost, the kind of blueprint of everything of RPM is those steps in that journey of a real estate investor. But then on a week-to-week basis, on a monthly basis, you can get coaching from me. Because a lot of the time what happens is you watch a YouTube video, you listen to a podcast, and you're like, right, that works in theory. I understand how that works, but how does that apply to me and my situation? You need personalized feedback. And so really this is a vehicle for that. I at least do one, sometimes two coaching calls per month, group coaching calls, where you can just bring your questions, you bring your problems, I help give you feedback. So that's kind of the foundation. But I'm also doing something called hot seats. These are one-on-one 30-minute calls, and you have to have a very specific challenge that you're looking to solve. And I do a couple of those per week, and you bring those and we record them. And then there's a library. So every single week, if I'm doing at least a couple of those, sometimes more hot seats, there's going to be a huge library of all these specific problems that people in the community have with me coaching them. So you're essentially looking over my shoulder. If you're the person getting the coaching, you're getting that personalized help. But even if you're not, you're getting to watch how other people are having problems and how are they solving it, and you can learn from them through this online coaching. So those are two of the kind of core pieces to get coaching from me. But what's really cool and I'm excited about, I mentioned people taking action, and I'm a sports guy. I've been on a lot of teams. And so accountability is a big piece of you taking what you've learned and what you know you should be doing and actually doing it on a week-to-week basis. And so inside of RPM, we have something called action teams. These are our accountability groups where we handpick 8 to 10 people and we put you in this group, and you have an assistant coach. Another investor is a little bit farther ahead than you, and they kind of moderate and monitor the group. And on a week-to-week basis, every Friday, you're posting, what are my actions plans for the next week? What do I hope to do to move me a little bit closer to my real estate investing goals? And then you're also going to have accountability from the week before. You said you're going to call that mortgage broker. You said you're going to send out 100 letters. You said you're going to drive for dollars. How did that go? And not in a mean way, not in a mean-spirited way, in an encouraging way, like we're going to hold you to what you said you're going to do and have accountability in a fun team environment with a coach. So it's essentially like a little mastermind group, and we're very thoughtful about that. And this is where you're going to get a ton of traction on a week-to-week basis. Then another thing I'm super excited about, inside of a community where you get to know people and have relationships, there can be a lot of transparency. Have you ever noticed that when you talk to real estate investors, people kind of hold back the numbers? How did they really do that deal? What were the good things, the bad things? What was the paperwork like? Well, inside of RPM, I'm going to take the lead and be very transparent with my own real estate investing business. So I have a whole section called Coach's Business Backstage, where I'm going to share my deals. How did I find them? What were the numbers like? What were some of the mistakes I made? And give you the dialogue and the behind the scenes transparency basically on my real estate investing business, both the properties, but also the systems. How do I do bookkeeping? How do I even pay bills? Like all the mundane kind of details that it would be helpful to know how somebody a few steps ahead of you are doing those things. So I'm going to take the lead on that, but then there's a lot of sharing between other people. We have something called a swipe file where I'm going to have all of my documents, all of my operations manual, essentially all those checklists and systems and paperwork that I use inside my business. You could basically get a little business model for a rental property business inside a box, inside a community. And so I'm going to be sharing all of my documents, but then everybody else is also sharing their documents so that you have the tools, the checklist, the paperwork. Real estate investing has a lot of that you need to execute and implement all those lessons that you're learning. And then last but not least, this is going to be a community for learning. So my 4 core courses, which are all about the 30 days of a better rental investor, is kind of my blueprint and how do you implement your business in the next 30 days. The Deal Finder course, which is all about marketing and lead generation. The Contract to Closing course, which is all about due diligence and buying properties and the paperwork you have to do that. And then rental property analysis, which is all about the spreadsheet and the mindset and how do you run the numbers on a property so that you're confident that it's a good deal whenever you buy it. So those 4 courses are just included in the RPM community. But then ongoing, I'm going to be doing these workshops where you can think about them like kind of like crash courses on very little micro topics. And I'm going to sell those publicly. So those will be paid workshops, but everybody in RPM gets to use that library of growing workshops over time. And any other courses that I make, that I add, they'll also get that. So learning plus coaching plus the community, the forum, interacting with other people. We're going to deliberately connect you with other people who are at the same stage you are, maybe in the same location, so that you can build those relationships and that networking. That's kind of hard to do sometimes when you're isolated, when you're doing everything on your own. We're going to bring in like-minded people who have the Coach Carson, the small and mighty kind of ethos, and all in one place to work together, to grow together, to have the goal of financial independence together, but doing that through rental properties. So far, it's just been me talking about this, but I don't want you to take just my word for it. If you look at the link in the podcast and the YouTube description, there's a long list of testimonials from people who have already been in this program for the last couple months. And so I'd love for you to hear from them, the videos, the text that they share about what it's like for them to be involved in action groups, what kind of progress they're making, what kind of results they're seeing, what it's like to get coaching from me. So don't just take my word for it. Go check that out, because I think in 2023, 2024, we're going to look back at this a few years from now and say this was sort of a turning point for real estate investors. This was a big, huge, challenging time when a lot of people kind of threw their hands up and said, I'm out. But because of that, the people who figured it out, the people who pivoted, they changed, they figured out the new strategies, the way to make it work, they thrived and they got to their ultimate goal, financial freedom, financial independence, having more options. They continued towards that journey and they made even more progress because they stuck with it, because they figured it out. I would love for you to be one of those people. I would love to be the co-pilot beside you, helping you out as your coach. RPM, Rental Property Mastery, is the way I can do that. And to join, there's actually a $500 discount for the first 30 members. So ultimately it's going to be capped at 300 people. And the first 30 though, we're trying to make it special. We're trying to incentivize you for getting in early. We have 40 people who joined us in the pilot program, and then we're opening the doors now. So if you want to get at the lowest price it's ever going to be, we will not go back to that price again in the future. It's probably going to go up a lot more than that. Go ahead and check it out. Being early, being the first does have its advantages. So I'd love for you to join. If you have any questions for me personally, leave them in the comments of the YouTube channel, or if you're listening on the podcast, send an email to podcast@coachcarson.com, and I would love to hear from you. I hope to see you soon, whether it's in Rental Property Mastery or on the podcast and the YouTube channel. And this show and this whole movement is all about helping you become a better real estate investor so you can achieve financial independence and do more of what matters. I'll see you next time.